All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Hindu Insider. This evening is brought to you by Hindu Youth Network, established under the auspices of the Hindu Endowments Board Singapore. This evening is perhaps one of the key milestones to our series because we are having a special session about women by women. So let me just introduce myself, Losheini Ravindran. Along with me on board, we have Vinodhinee and Pavitra, who will be
Hi.
embarking. Hi, guys. Hello.
Hi.
We will be embarking on a discursive journey about women in Vedic and Puranic culture. Now, before going any further, here are some things for you all to take note of. Our views are purely reflexive of our discursive interactions with narrative retellings that we have read and perspectives of spiritual guides. We do not intend to provide any sort of prescriptive statements or stance about this topic. In other words, we aren't here to give you absolute answers, but we are here to absolutely engage you in a thought-provoking conversation that would perhaps expand upon your reflections. So do join us in the sharing of insights that will engage us and highlights that will continue to intrigue us. I will first like to take reference from a Sanskrit saying that is popularly ascribed to Manu, which states about women, and it says the meaning roughly says as it is: where women are respected, gods reside, and where women are not respected, no action bears fruit. So this kind of a saying itself kind of reinstates the positionality of women as being a crucial point or crucial factor in every family unit or even in the society at large. And this is something that we want to reinstate upon first, because there's always a certain stereotype that women in the ancient times were all not having any sorts of agency. They were people who were trapped into some kind of a patriarchal setup, so on and so forth. But that was not always true, because you have women from different walks of life who actually debunk this myth. Rather, women were encouraged to be as educated as men during the Vedic times, and this actually led to the rise of the female presence in intellectual debates, in astrology and philosophy, and of course in political affairs as well, which we are going to see later in the Puranic times when we hear from Pavitra. And this is very important because there is some kind of a key role then being assigned to women beyond being just a householder, for instance. We can see this from the Vedic period through figures like Gargi, Maitreyi, and Anasuya, who actually had great interest and involvement in the gaining of knowledge through religious philosophy. And it is said that Gargi was one of the female philosophers in the court who actually had a debate with sage Yajnavalkya, with a long series of introspective discussions on the Atman, the soul. And this is something that we would find a surprise, because all this while there's been some kind of a preconceived notions that, women those times were not allowed to even speak. And you hear a woman here who's talking about something so profound and so deep in understanding. And apart from being a rishi patni, a woman like Maitreyi actually seeks the guidance of a husband, sage Yajnavalkya, to reflect upon the meaning of life. So the story goes that sage Yajnavalkya asked both his wives, Maitreyi as well as Katyayani, on what they would like to have as a boon before he actually takes up sannyasa upon going for ascetic vows. And when that happens, his wife Maitreyi actually asks him a very important question. She asks him if material wealth is something permanent, to which actually sage Yajnavalkya says no. He says that is not permanent. And then she gets very curious and she asks, so what then is permanent knowledge? And she gets to realize that it is actually the wealth of immortality is not something material, but is something intangible. It's about something that requires a deeper understanding of the self. And in the end, that is the boon that she seeks, the wealth of immortality. So we always think, even at present times, I think Vinodhinee and Pavitra relate. We always like to talk about women as those who want to buy the best sari when they go to a shopping center, or like this idea of women as being very materialistic has always been spoken about perennially. But this kind of examples really seek to show another side of women, the woman who seeks a certain spiritual reality that she might not have thought of until it strikes her at the very moment. So this kind of spiritual awakenings actually apply to both men and women alike. And I think this story is a testament to that understanding. I would also like to take a reference from an article written by Sri Nandanandana, a disciple of Srila Prabhupada, on women in Vedic culture. So in his article, Sri Nandanandana actually explains that in ancient India, the Sanskrit words used by the husband for the wife were patni, the one who leads the husband through life, dharma patni, the one who guides the husband in dharma, and sahadharma Sahadharmacharini, the one who moves with the husband on the path of dharma, righteousness, and duty. And this is how ancient Vedic culture actually viewed the partnership or the companionship of a husband and wife. And this actually suggests that women are not viewed as subservient individuals necessarily, and they were not seen as people who were not in the position to guide, but they were rather seen as knowledgeable individuals, awakened individuals, and individuals who are aware and who are able to serve as pillars of support in their spouse's spiritual journey. And this is even evident from the encounters faced by the Rishi Patni Anasuya and of course Arundhati, who with their spouses actually are able to attain a certain spiritual consciousness. And of course, when we also talk about Vedic culture, there's also Puranic culture that comes about later. And we observe how narrative of kings, deities, and their families also are being represented symbolically, even through the women, the female characters in a household. And perhaps an interesting example in light of this is actually the Trimurti, or the divine trinity we often know about in the Hindu pantheon. We talk about Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. And we always know them through their occupations as well: the creator, the preserver, and the destroyer. And then that one thing that is always hard to ignore is how the idea of their consorts. We have Saraswati, we have Lakshmi and Parvati, respectively. And people then wonder, so does this mean that the woman is actually reliant on a man because she needs a male support? But if you were to think of it this way, just a food for thought, perhaps you can understand it in the occupational sense. For productive creation, you need knowledge, just like how Brahma is with Saraswati, who's the goddess of knowledge. And for preservation, you need wealth, just like how Vishnu is with Lakshmi, the goddess of wealth. And for destruction, you need power or Shakti, just like how Shiva is with Shakti, the goddess of power, and also associated with Kali, the goddess of destruction herself. And the Trinity actually does not, perhaps to think of it this way, the Trinity is not necessarily giving women the power, but they are rather acknowledging the importance of their power and role in their own realization of themselves as a whole. So how else can this be best described than the visuals of Ardhanarishwara that we see in temples and in paintings still today? This is really a sign of how women have always been acknowledged as far as this Puranic culture and Vedic culture is concerned. They have been acknowledged as a part of a man's life, where they are even involved in conducting rituals and so on with their husband. In fact, some readings do tell that for certain prayers you can't just do it alone. You have to have your wife to do it together with you, because the family unit is often not depicted as a patriarchal one necessarily, with just the man being the sole person involved, but it also has the wife who comes in and forms the crux of the family unit as a whole. And we of course have philosophers, we have people who want to go into an in-depth knowledge of their own selves, where they try to readdress themselves in a different way. That is something that has perhaps been overlooked when thinking about women over time. And in light of this, maybe one question that I do have that comes about is, when we are speaking of such emphasized significance of women in the family, then the question comes about as to how is this really being depicted? Because so far you might go like, Losheini, you have shared about how important women are in the household. So in what sense is this being articulated and how is this shown? So that kind of brings me to this question that I have, which is about how multidimensional was a role of a woman back then during the Vedic period. And perhaps Vinodhinee, could you share more about what do you think this multidimensional role of a woman was like during the Vedic period?
Hi, Losheini, hi. Hi, Pavitra. Hi to everybody who's viewing us here. Thank you. Women's role in the Vedic society was not as restricted as we popularly think, But for talking about this, I have to give 2-3 preludes before going ahead with this. One, which Losheini already mentioned for me, but I just want to re-emphasize. In the Vedic society, the family is considered as a unit, not the individual. That is how the Vedas are. The family is considered as a unit. And what is a unit? I would like to give an example. Like it is like our physical body. Your eyes perform one function, your mouth performs one function. They both perform totally different function. Doesn't mean one is less important than the other, right? So that is what a unit means. Each person forming part of the unit is performing a different duty and responsibility. The second prelude that I want to give is that Vedas emphasize on the duties aspect of a human being. As a human being, we perform a lot of roles, and it is important that you perform your duty, and automatically the rights of the other person is getting fulfilled in that sense. So if I perform my duty as a wife, which is to keep my husband happy, as a mother, then automatically my husband's rights are fulfilled. So similarly the same works with the husband. So unlike the society that is very popular these days, where we place emphasis on rights, Vedas place emphasis on duties. So giving those two preludes, I will say that my guru, Swami Paramantanandaji, a disciple of Swami Dayananda Saraswati of Harsha Vidya Gurukula, he has given in a context, in the Bhagavad Gita context, where Arjuna in the first chapter he actually tells to Krishna he's finding lot of excuses to not fight the war. One of the excuse he gives is that if I fight the war, the women are going to be widowed, so the society is going to crumble. So why does he say that? Why he says that? So in that context, my Swamiji told that there are three duties, major duties that a woman performs in the traditional Vedic society. One is the duty of a homemaker, and a home is not just bricks and cement and everything, right? A home is a place where you feel like it, a home. So it's not like what we popularly think, that it's an unskilled labor. It doesn't require literacy. It might not require an academic qualification. Definitely it does not require a paper qualification per se, but it requires a high cultural literacy, emotional literacy. The level of literacy that you require is very high for this. It's a very mature duty, skill duty. I mean, I think as a homemaker, you are taking care of everything, from the finance to the inventory to everything you're taking care of. So it is a all encompassing role, the role of a homemaker. The second role that Swamiji says is that of a peacemaker, where the family consists of various personalities, people with different ideas, different ego clashes. There will be a lot of stress and differences in that. If these stresses are not okay, there might be ego classes, so what we might think. But again, the unit, which is the family, will not be functional anymore. Just imagine if one day our eyes decides not to perform what our brain wants, what happens to it, right? So it is important that each and every person in the family is together performing and aiming towards one thing. Okay. And also it is also mentioned that grihastha, that is the family life per se, is for performing your duties, like I mentioned, and it is also more for contribution and to give. Contribute in what way? Contribute your love, contribute your effort, contribute your physical effort, mental effort, everything. And the women, the Kulas 3, like I would like to call in Sanskrit, she was doing this at a great extent. And she had actually given everything to this to the family. And she resolved matters in such a way that nobody is upset. So just imagine the negotiator skills that she needs for this. It's not a small thing to address this. She has to address in such a way that one person doesn't lose respect on the other. You still have to love each other. They all still have to love you. So, yeah, it's a big thing. The third thing is a motivator role that she performed, which is she performed each member of the family is going towards different aims and different goals, right? So she ensured that each of them pursued that goal, and she was the driving force behind it. And if that is not there, I don't think anybody will be able to like go ahead and do it, right? This is in respect to the current day's context that I'm saying, the motivator's role. But if you see in traditionally and even today to a great extent, I think it's more important today. Vedas classify that the human goals into four purusharthas. It's called artha, kama, dharma, and moksha. So easily we all they every member in the family is the pursuit of one or the other purusharthas. Mostly the younger ones will be in the pursuit of artha and kama, and the older generation, maybe the parents, will be in the pursuit of moksha, something like that. But uh, she is the one who is going to draw the line in the pursuit of artha and kama. You should not lose sight of dharma and moksha. So she ensured that the line was drawn. That's where all our Puranic women come into play. The Mandodari, she was, I mean, just because you love your husband doesn't mean she loved him unconditionally. Tremendous love towards Ravana. That's the kind of love that you really have to, I mean, but she still drew the line saying that in your pursuit of artha and kama, you're losing sight of dharma. It's not
Yes,
right, right?
indeed.
and 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 I want to clarify that there is nothing wrong in pursuing artha and kama. The Vedas are recognizing it as a goal, okay? But the only they are recognizing it per se as a goal. Please pursue artha, please pursue kama, but not at the cost of dharma or moksha. That's what they're saying. We should pursue it. She draws the line and she encourages the family members to pursue also the other two purusharthas more diligently. But what is the consequence in case she doesn't do this, right? A society is consisting of three generations of people: the older generation, the current generation, which as of now it's all of us, and then the younger generation, ones who are dependent on us. More or less, most of the time, if not financial, at least emotionally, the older generation and the younger generation is dependent on us for everything. Think about it. The older generation is dependent on the current generation. Both the generations are dependent on the current generation. Might, but emotionally, financially, logistically, they are dependent on us. And when the Kulastri loses sight of it, the others might lose sight, but she ensured that she didn't lose sight, and she brought back the others to that path where the Purusharthas are accomplished, and all the three duties towards the current generation, to the older generation, to the younger generation is also performed. So this, I think, I mean, this required great skills. This I think this is a, I don't know if you can keep us in a more elevated position than this. I really want to thank the Vedas for putting us in such a high position.
And Vinodin, thank you so much. It was really something very much insightful. But then there's also this other important question that comes up very often, actually, among many people is how sometimes when talking about the atma or the soul, we kind of think of a soul that has transcended notions of gender, identity, affiliation, so on and so forth. And then the question arises about with regard to that itself, because then another doubt that crops up is, so men, that you have instances of men entering the grihastha stage, where they actually proceed on to vanaprastha, then they become a sannyasa. But for women, how does this actually work? Like, do they actually, are they allowed to actually be a sannyasini without even the need of having to go through the processes, or do they actually have to go through all of the processes when it comes to women? What are your thoughts about that, Vinodini?
Okay. Firstly, to clarify, sannyasa is a mental state. Okay, doesn't
Mm.
mean you wear a kavi vastra or whatever. But for the man, he enters brahmacharya ashrama the minute he has the he goes to the gurukulam and all that. So,
Mm.
but for the women, her marriage is considered to be her starting of brahmacharya ashrama, at least in the Vedic period. Okay, so when she is married, she takes her husband as her guru, and then more in more cases than not, the husband is a teacher and he teaches the students, and she also ends up learning from him. So more often than not, she learns from her own husband the values and the moksha and everything, and then she also goes through her own process of grihastha, vanaprastha, and sannyasa along with her husband side.
Right. So in your case, your perspective on this is that when a woman marries, it's not just about the married life as such, but also the idea of how the spouse is a guru, someone who also leads the woman on the path of spirituality. And do you think this is a two-way thing where the wife herself is a guru for the husband? How do you understand that in that dynamics? Does that work in your opinion, or how?
Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. Like I said, she might end up learning better than him from him, right? So it definitely
Very
works. And
true.
like you also said, we have examples of Gargi. We also have this girl called Ubaya Bharati who actually moderated a debate between Lord Shankaracharya and Vandana Mishra,
Yes.
and she actually told her husband that you lost the debate. This is the only one she told that to him, and
Yes.
she
Yes.
and actually Adi Shankaracharya selected her to moderate the debate.
Yes.
Okay,
Very
yeah,
true.
he only selected that because in that story sense she's considered as an avatar of Saraswati, so
Mm-hmm.
she's considered as an what do you say, essence of Saraswati. So he saw that, and asked her to moderate, and then in that debate her husband lost, and she actually told him, "No, sorry, you lost, man."
Yes. Yeah. She already predicted it from start on what would happen. And this Vinodini, thank you so much for bringing this up, because this is a very important point about the change in positionalities. We are all this while, instead of seeing it very one dimensionally, where the man takes the decisions or the man can actually foretell what's happening. You have the women figure stepping in. Of course, when speaking about the higher order of spirituality, we don't talk about gender, but when living in a society, this kind of labels about gender, about identities, they can't go ignored. And when that happens, what is then the relationship with spirituality and this social norms that we are being conditioned in? I think, Pavitra, maybe you'd like to give some thoughts about this in relation to the Puranic age, as to how women actually coped with their spiritual awakening, as well as their spirituality, as well as understanding themselves in the context of the society they were in.
Okay. Well, firstly, coming from the basics and understanding that gender is actually tagged to the material body, which is temporary, and our real identity is the spirit soul. But and of course, our goal is to transcend our bodily identity. But however, we have to understand and accept that we are not there yet. And as long as we are in this vessel, in this body of a stree or a woman, uh, we are influenced by this body, which is why we have like feminine qualities, and we have certain qualities that which might be deemed inferior. For example, generally feminine qualities, some of them would be subservience, like you mentioned earlier, Loshni, and also
Mm-hmm.
like and the mood of surrender or Sharanagati also comes much more easier to women also, as well as like certain emotions. Maybe in the female body, it's more natural. It comes more naturally. And in the Vedas also, it's been said that for women actually, it comes more easier, which is also generally why in places of worship you see more women than men. So, so the thing is, so this might actually be seen as like, oh, okay, maybe inferior like that, but actually there's lots of examples of women who have use this actually instead for spiritual empowerment, like surrender and using those emotions and expressing those emotions to actually in your bhakti. It helps, like for example, Queen Kunti, um, in teachings of in prayers of Queen Kunti also actually, she prays to Krishna and she tells Krishna actually in the mood of surrender that please uh, keep bringing me troubles again and again, just so that in that emotion I can actually surrender to you, and I can remember you, because sometimes like how only during like times of hardships or troubles do we actually remember God. We're like, okay, oh my God, so the thing is, she actually uses these emotions in harnessing her bhakti. So in a current society that we live now, also we can learn from this woman in Puranic times also, how they actually use and harness these emotions in their bhakti, which is it's not very easy to do, because like because being emotional or just emotions in itself is not really like seen as a good thing, as compared to like maybe like maybe in the modern society they would expect they would prioritize logic, and maybe disregard emotions. So we can actually learn from from women like Queen Kunti. Yeah, like
Yes, I guess it's very true because, and also if you were to look at the narratives of these people, like as what Pavitra had brought up about Kunti and all, life was not like something very, it wasn't straightforward actually. I think one important thing we want to kind of emphasize upon is that it's not like this women just had enlightenment or an awakening overnight like that. It takes time. It takes a lot of time, experiences, and it holds a lot of relevance to us as well as women, or even for those who are having, women as a mother, as a wife, or as a friend, or as a sister in your life. There is so much of experiences and encounters these characters themselves go through. We're talking about Kunti had a lot of emotional tensions to deal with regard to Karna, with regard to the Pandavas, with regard to her position in the royal household itself. She didn't have a very happy life in the beginning, and even during the Kurukshetra war and everything, she was really in an internal strife, seeing both of her children fight together, with Karna on the Gaurava side and with the Pandavas, and all. So it is not like you suddenly have this idea of being enlightened. I mean, there are of course two types of people, right? Some people, perhaps after several births, they kind of have that realization, the futility of material living, where there's more to just something tangible, and they decide to look into the higher order of truth. And then you have some people who rather experience what is material life first, in order to then move on to the next stage, which is to understand what spirituality. And for examples like this, perhaps one of the best examples would be Devahuti, who comes, if I'm not wrong, she comes in Srimad Bhagavatam. She's the mother of Kapila
yeah.
Vasudeva, and she's with her husband Kardama Maharshi. In the beginning stages, she kind of prays for a happy family life. In fact, she shares that she wants to actually lead a family life with Kardama Maharshi, who at that point of time was very detached, a householder. So when they decide to have a family life, and after living for a long period of conjugal bliss, finally Kardama tells her that the time has come where there's a need for spirituality to be sought, and that is when Devahuti feels the sense of attachment being pulled, and she's like, what more is there than to life? And that's when she starts to slowly think and introspect. And when her child is born, when Kapila Vasudeva is born, Kardama says that your son would actually be helping you with this. He will be sharing with you what this means all the while. And so this is something gradual, and it's not just about sometimes women being taught by men necessarily. In fact, like what Vinodhinee and Pavitra say, women also do teach certain things to men about spirituality and so on. And it is definitely something that is on both sides. It's something mutual. And I think something interesting about that would also be the idea of apsaras is something that is much less spoken about, rather. And you have this idea of always the trope of an apsara coming to disrupt a sage's prayers, or his penance. And she comes, and then he decides to go into householder's life. And there was something interesting that I read about it. It was from Devdutt's book, actually. He talks about how apsara is derived from the Sanskrit word apsa, which refers to water. And a tapasvi, the word tapasvi is derived from the word tapa, which is fire. And if you think about it metaphorically, the fire can be put out by the water. It tames it. So likewise, women's role is it's not, it doesn't mean to be weak when you are a peacemaker, or someone who wants to kind of calm things down. It kind of also shows an empowerment in a way, because you can see how the female herself is able to even change the decisions, or the mindset of certain people. And I think that is also something very significant when considering about the multifaceted role. So sometimes the woman comes as a temptress, sometimes she comes as the one who is the person who enlightens the male figure, so on and so forth. But what really is essential to know, that beyond gender, there is this kind of a soulful interaction that these characters share in both the Vedic age as well as the Puranic age. And perhaps one thing to also consider is this idea that people kind of ponder about. And I want to hear this from Vinodhinee and Pavitra. Like, do you think women were treated with equal status with men back then during the Vedic and Puranic period? What are your thoughts about that? What do you understand by equal status? if there's something like an equal status.
Well, okay, before I get to that question, I just also want to talk about like women taking sannyas. So basically, like, from my understanding, I just wanted to share also, like, there are women who have been like who have taken up sannyas, but it's frequently not the case also, because the thing is, when you take up sannyas, you have to travel. You're also alone. So being a woman also, you are a little vulnerable. So the thing is, there needs to be some protection also. Like, if you, like, you're a woman and then you're traveling alone. So that's the reason why also, it's one of the reasons why, like, women actually, like, they can take sannyas, but it's not so frequent. And just exactly like Vinodhinee said also, like, husbands, right, they are addressed as Prabhu, usually in the Vedic times. And Prabhu means like spiritual master, something like that. So the thing is, I don't know about now, because now it's Kali Yuga, but when we're talking about Sakya Yuga and Treta Yuga, the men were very they were very pakka then. They really were like, they really were like, gurus. They, yeah, they followed
We should
everything.
do another session, role of men in Vedic society.
Yeah, because it has changed a lot. Times change. So the thing is, so men then, were in like the perfect state to actually, like, to actually to be siksha gurus, to guide their wives. Like, yeah. So the thing is, that's the reason why women, they naturally, they didn't really need to take sannyas. When the husband, like, when he leaves the household, like, her children are there also. They start their own family lives. She's also, the rest of her life is just like, spent serving the lordships. So that, answering that, and coming back to your question, Loshni, uh, I'm just going to be honest, and I would say that, like, back then, I personally do not think that men and women were given equal status. But then again, why should there be? Because I feel like we're talking about apples and oranges. It's not. Yeah, so it's like, two completely different things.
Definitely.
Yeah, so, like, it entails entirely different duties. And so the thing is, we all have our different natures and abilities, which means that we have our different talents. So, and I feel like woman empowerment is like, not necessarily like, okay, um okay, you have to go out and like do this and that, but actually giving them that empowerment for freedom of choice, what they want to do. If they want to be a householder or whatever that they want to do, empowering them to do that and do it in the best way that they can. So, yeah, so the thing is, like, so yeah, it's just like, using like some things, it just comes to, like, maybe, like, us better than, like, men, or like, for men also, maybe certain things, might come easier to them than us. So the thing is, like, um like like for example, like, we have this visceral nature in us as women also, like, to kind of take care or want to protect, so that's why naturally, like, like, women are also seen as mothers. And and their duty, like, like taking care of, like, the children, and family is actually, like, a really very important part of, like, one of the spiritual masters from my tradition where I come from. He actually said that, it's important to change with the times, but we have to stick to the essence. So the thing is, like, um, if you actually, like, take care of, like, the woman, or the children, if you take care of the family and all, everything will just, like, come naturally. So, if we do our duties to do that, I yeah, it's what's I think that's what's best. Yeah. So I'm sorry, I'm just like trying to find the word, but basically what I'm trying to say is, like,
That was very good.
yeah, it's just like apples and oranges. It's not equal, but it's fine, and
Yes.
it's changing also now.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I totally agree on that, which is precisely why I wanted to, kind of ask this question to both of you, because I think it's important to note that every time when we talk about equality, we've got to reconsider about the usage of terms, because, what do you mean by equal? What if I were to change the word into uniqueness? Like what Pavitra was mentioning, you can't compare two things that are very different in in their mentalities, in their approaches towards life. It's definitely, there's definitely a difference in there, but the difference does not mean in any way, let me repeat, the difference in that way does not mean that one is inferior or superior to the other. I think that is something very important to emphasize here at this point, because many a times people think the differences lead to inferiority. Not necessarily. Differences lead to awareness at times. It makes people more realized that and aware that they are actually different, but they are unique, and they have their own individualized notions of what they of their perception towards the worldviews, to their worldviews. So I think that's something important to take note of. And I guess another takeaway, perhaps, this is subjective once again. I think we want to reinstate upon that as well. This is subjective, but of course, another question that might come about, as I can see from some of the comments, is also the idea of how is it really such that women have to only be a grihastha to be in a grihastha stage? Must she be someone's patni? Must she be a dharma patni only to realize dharma? Or why can't she not go straight into spirituality? Well, to be honest, I don't think there's any, from what I know, perhaps correct me, any two of you, if I'm wrong, but from what I understand, there's really no strict rule that says that women have to follow the 4 ashramas of life. As far as Hinduism is concerned, it gives you options. It doesn't give you rules to follow. I don't think that's how Hinduism positions itself. In fact, rules for that matter kind of also projects the idea of how man-made constructs or man-made conventions or norms don't necessarily translate to what's being said in the Shastras or the Vedas. I think that is something that we need to clear first of all. Man-made structures, man-made norms change over time, change across different societies. But what is stated in the Shastras and Vedas, that is totally a different story altogether. So that is something we need to think about. And of course, that being said, certain man-made constructs might deem taking sannyasa as a no-no for women, but in essence, if you were to think about it, I don't think freedom is something given. You have it in you. So for a woman to be a sannyasini or anything, I think it's really up to the individual. And this is really evident, if you were to go slightly further, to the later periods in time, you have examples of female philosophers who chose not to actually go into the family life. Even in vernacular traditions, you have Avayar in Tamil Nadu, you have Akka Mahadevi in Karnataka, you have Mirabai, who was born into a royal family, but she chose to devote her life to Krishna in spite of talks of marriage and everything, but she decided to ultimately surrender herself to the supreme reality that she perceived. So there is really no cut and right rule as to whether women should not be a sannyasini, or even if they were to be a sannyasini, they have to first go into married life. That is something really up to the individual, because a woman can be forced into a marriage, but whether she's leading a married life emotionally and in terms of her understanding, that's another different story altogether. So this kind of also brings the idea of in the Bhagavad Gita about how Krishna kind of talks about the idea of nishkama karma phala, which is the idea of not nishkama means do not have any desires attached to the duty you're doing. So for those who are being householders, they need not actually be an attached householder. You can be detached from the desires and expectations, but you still can do your duties within a family unit itself. So that's another marga, or another way that people try to come to terms with their spirituality in a family unit. And of course, you have examples of those who choose not to be in a family unit, but perhaps want to move on to the spiritual reality directly. So these are basically different paths, but we are not trying to say that it is important for women to get married and only then they will be able to move on to the next path. That is not necessarily. It really depends on spiritual maturity of every individual and every atma. So we have to understand that we are definitely not aware of how many births we have taken, how many past lives we have been through, and our spiritual maturity to a certain extent is also dependent on that, which is why some people, when they are born, after a while they realize that they want to go on to a different path and they go ahead with it, whereas some people, they actually get married, they lead the family life, and after they have done all their duties as a householder, they decide to go to the next step. So these ideas are definitely pretty subjective, but one thing is to be understand is they are not being imposed in any way. There are options being given, but there are options, not even options being given, but there are options that are available. But I guess it is up to us to kind of make our call from there and decide on what we want to do about what are the possible paths that lay in front of us. Vinodhinee, what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I pretty much agree with what both of you said. For sannyasa ashrama, definitely a grihastha ashrama is not necessary for a woman. She thinks she's ready, but it is important that she's ready. Like she said, you have to be ready for sannyasa at the mental level. Then you can go ahead and straight away take sannyasa. No need to take the path of grihastha ashrama, vanaprastha, and then sannyasa, just like any other man. Coming back to the question on equality, I agree completely with what Pavitra said. We are not equal, but we are equivalent. Again, I want to go back to my example of the human body. There is no use if now my mouth is going to fight with my eyes, saying why are you seeing, why are you talking? So there is no use. Both are performing different functions. Doesn't
Yes.
both are highly important, equally important, and both are different functions, but they make together the family as a unit. So there is no need for equality because they are performing different functions and you cannot compare both. But yes, both were given an equivalent status in the society. Definitely yes.
And perhaps in light of that, my next question to you guys would be: is there any women figure whom you take up as a role model, or who has inspired you in the Vedic age or the Puranic age, and why is that so? In terms of, it can be their spiritual seeking or their role in the family unit, etc. But is there any women character, female character, who has really inspired you when thinking about this?
Um, there have been a few who have inspired me. Like for example, like I mentioned earlier, Queen Kunti definitely have inspired me because, like her mental prowess and strength. It's just uh, yeah, it's very formidable. She keeps going, but she doesn't do it like oh, it's out of like my own strength, but she does it out of complete surrender. Okay, the Lord is here, so I know that I can get through this, and I'm going to raise my hands and surrender to Him because I know He's going to get me through this. So she's inspiring. Another interesting a personality from the Bhagavatam who personally, like I felt little uh, inspired or affected by is actually Pingala. So Pingala, there's actually something called Pingala Gita also.
Mm-hmm.
Um, basically, right, the story in the Bhagavatam goes like Pingala, she was actually like a prostitute. So she was like, she was a sex worker. So and the thing is like, she was like a ravishing beauty back in her days. And then many men would be outside her house queuing, for her. So the thing is like as time went by, she became older, and one day she just like stepped out of like her house, her apartment, and she realizes that there's no man outside waiting for her. There's no one anymore. And then and she becomes like very distressed. She starts lamenting, and then she waits until nightfall, but no one comes. And then at that moment, it just strikes her. She realizes that actually, like at that moment, there's this mood of renunciation which comes over her. That she realizes that all of these years, I have spent frivolously, just like on my body and all. When this body is gonna get old, and now I realize that like actually it's of no use. I spend time for nothing. So she gets into this mood of renunciation, and then she renounces there and then, and she goes to like a pilgrimage. She stops working her profession, and then she actually renounces there and then. So it kind of like it's very different because like Loshini, like you said, right, these apsaras, how they are always portrayed as like women who come down like like Menaga and Vishwamitra, that, right, and Shambhala Muni, and like yeah, apsaras, they come down to disturb the the tapasya of these sages. Apsaras are women, they are seen as that. But and also in like in Bhagavatam and in the Vedas, women are seen as like very very pakka, always following this and that, very pakka. But it was really nice for me to see a woman who's flawed,
Mm-hmm.
and the thing is like like Bhagavatam or Vedas, it kind of addresses or focuses more on men's sexuality or their struggle with lust. But
Mm-hmm.
Pingala, this pastime of Pingala actually acknowledges like women and how, like, women, okay, like, in other texts and all, or outside of, like, like Hinduism also, we have heard of like women or prostitutes being the receivers of wisdom. But here, actually, Pingala, she's not just a receiver of wisdom, but she becomes one of the 24 spiritual masters of the Avadut Brahmana. So
Right.
she, from that position of where she was, she actually, like, she gets that mood of renunciation. It shows her struggle with lust, and how flawed she is, and how she actually overcomes that also. And yeah, and how she also uses, like, it's once again addresses, like, like being in the body of a woman also, she gets all of these emotions, she realizes, like, like, oh, it's just been so useless, this amount of years I spent on this. And then, like, using that emotion, she's so determined, she uses it as spiritual empowerment. So that is something which kind of, got to me.
I think this is a really beautiful story because it really shows a very realistic portrayal, of human nature. As human nature is something that has its flaws, and yet, the idea of redemption, or the idea of wanting to go beyond all these trials and tribulations, is what makes Pingala special, and makes an emblem of empowerment itself. Vinodini, what about you?
I like these villain wives, like, for example, like I already mentioned, I like Ravana's wife Mandodari a lot. She's one of the six
Villain wife.
pativratas. She's one of the six pativratas, actually, the six
Yes.
pativratas that I mentioned. Yeah, so I like her. Like I said, she kept him in check without compromising on her love for him, which
Yes.
I think it requires emotional clarity. That you still
Mhm.
love him, but you still guide him also. So I like Mandodari. The second person I like, she's a very famous. I think she's actually this one of she's a pioneer of so-called feminism. Is Draupadi. She oh my God, she's such a strong character. Really, she I know, in the end, when they actually decided that they probably do not want to wage a war. I'm not saying she's right, but she stood that no, I want a war. I am not able to forget the incident what happened to me in that sabha. So I think Draupadi, I really like Draupadi also. And one more person, a very interesting side character in Ramayana is Urmila, who is the wife of
Yeah.
Lakshmana. So we know Lakshmana as a character who served Rama and Sita, and he went behind them in the forest with the promise, with requesting Rama on all fours that please take me with you because you guys need somebody to serve you. But just imagine the position of the wife there, the Urmila, how much she would have gone through. And when she actually went ahead and requested to Lakshmana, saying, "I will come with you. You guys have you have somebody. You are serving somebody. Let me come and serve you at least." He said, "No, because I will not be able to take care of you. In taking care of you, I will forget my purpose of going and actually taking care of my brother and his wife." So that's what she said. And for 14 years, she had to be away from him. But I think she's also a very interesting character, very a characters that we can look up to, who are unconventional, but who are really epitome of the actually what women stood for in our culture.
Indeed, indeed, very true. I really like, Vinodini, about how you are bringing about characters who are perhaps less spoken about, but yet so much pivotal in the role of different characters in these epics and Puranas. I think it's very important. And there's actually one more mentioning by Miss Jagadishwari on Lopamutra, totally, because as she has mentioned as well, she was. Also a part of, she's credited also along with Agastya for the Lalita Sahasranamam. And I think this is something very significant to note as well, because we are now talking about women involved in writing, in producing religious expressions of deities. I think these really show women as having so much of multifaceted roles to play, and it really adds weight to their presence in stories, apart from just being figures who are, just there to be saved or something. It really kind of empowers them. It shows the kind of creative thought that they possess, the ability for them to actually differentiate and discern between emotional thinking and pragmatism, and of course, on morals, as we can see from Mandodari and so on. And perhaps another thing is also about how do you think this Vedas and Puranas, this narratives that we have heard so far, we have had so much of wonderful sharing from both of you, especially about how these women have so much of interesting facts about them in terms of their roles in the family unit and society. But what do you think we as contemporaries here, like all of us, we are now living in the current age of Kali Yuga. We are seeing so many challenges. We are seeing instances of how women are sometimes subjugated, about how instances of women, being subject to challenges and all. I think men and women alike, they have their own challenges. But in light of women itself, regarding this topic, what do you think we as individuals, as women, can actually learn from these women in the Vedic age and Puranic times? Uh, Perhaps I would like to hear it from both of you. Maybe we can start with Vinodhini. What do you think we can learn from these women?
Okay. Okay. This one, I think we can learn. Firstly, we can learn, like I said, uh, um, how you can keep people in track without compromising on your love, and more importantly, without compromising on your respect for them. Okay, so there is no disrespectful word spoken by Mandodari to Ravana when she said that you're going wrong, but she said it matter of factly, you're being wrong, but I still love you. So, but you're doing wrong. Okay? So that is one thing. Second thing I understood is it is important, like what I see the problem right now is we somehow kind of feel that the traditional duties that a women perform are inferior. It might
Yes.
be because the respect that it deserves is not given. Okay, so
Yes.
it's being looked upon now. So it is important to understand that it is very important. Just imagine one limb or one body not function, one part of your body not functioning. It is
Yes.
very important. So I think it has to be given the respect that it deserves, and it deserves equal respect, if not more. Both deserve equal respect. Third thing I would like to say is the the just because these are the duties doesn't mean that we are not going to change according to the times, but the spirit and the essence of it remains the same. Like for example, I have a helper at home, doesn't mean I'm not a homemaker. I'm still running it from behind. I'm still running it from behind. So I'm still running it. I'm just using
We
the
believe you.
I'm just using the means that I can to execute it. But still, I'm still running the show of the homemaker, peacemaker, motivator, or that's what I like to think. So I think these are important to get clarified in the present context.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And yes, Vinodini, I just have a question for you as well, in regard to one of our viewers they've also brought this up, about women and Vedas. Like what is their interaction with the Vedas like? Can they read the Vedas, or or do they produce certain content in the Vedas from what you know? Perhaps some sharing on that.
I don't. I'm not sure about chanting the Vedas, to be honest. But
Mhm.
the Vedas, as such, never is referred to as a he or a she anywhere.
Yes.
It's just a human being. So the learning of the Vedas is for everyone. The
Yeah.
learning of the Vedas is for everyone. So that is in nowhere restricted by anybody. But as far as I know, the chanting, women cannot chant because apparently the meters of the Vedas are not exactly in line with the physical construct of. So the chanting is only a small part of the Vedas, and of course there are. I don't know why you want to stick to do something that you don't want to do, right? So if they say don't chant the Vedas, you have so many things to chant. Your Bhagavad Gita, your Vishnu Sahasranama, you have so many things. So I think it's just you have equally respectable texts. Vedas are only a small part of are the major part, but a part of our scriptures. But we have other texts which we can of course.
Yes. I think that's really well said. I mean, yeah, I mean, over many times, there's always this question about Vedas and women, and I guess it's, of course, I think there are always different perspectives with regard to this as well. But I guess, ultimately, there's nothing that bans people from doing things, in as far as what I understand. But once again, this really is based on the individual, on what the soul thinks, or what the person is like in their spiritual maturity with regard to that. Pavitra, what are your thoughts on this, actually?
I'm sorry, my thoughts on what actually?
Like on
Okay,
women and the Vedas, and about them learning about spirituality and so on.
um okay, so basically, like, from what I know, like, we can, just like Vinodhinee said, reciting mantras, even if you're a man or a woman, I think you have to be a little bit careful about it also, because you have to understand that there are certain vibrations and
Yes.
side effects to it. But we can we can definitely recite Vedic texts,
Yeah.
like the Bhagavatam, the
Mm-hmm.
Bhagavad Gita, the different Puranas that are there, and also we can do chanting also,
Mm-hmm.
chanting,
Japa.
uh, yeah, chanting, yeah, japa, as a
Yes.
practice we can do that. And that itself, actually, like in this Kali Yuga also, like, from what I heard, and from like my tradition also, it is said that in Kali Yuga, chanting is recommended for
Yeah.
all souls.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, we also have to remember the root, like, whether, like, because I see someone asking about Grihastha ashram, and, like,
Mm.
whether can they be single. At the end of the day, we have to address the root, like,
Mm.
because
Yes.
as spirit souls, our at the end of the day, uh, our goal is to, like, go back to God.
Yes.
So, does this actually help? Does being in a Grihastha ashram help, or is it actually detrimental? Does being single help, or do we actually have to address some things which you think that in a Grihastha ashram it would be addressed? And a
Yes.
key takeaway that, like, for women of modern times is, like, we cannot expect, like, similar treatment, like, from, like Sakya, Treta, and Dwapara Yoga. Um, yeah, because, like, it's different times. So,
Yes. Yes.
but the thing is, things are changing so much now also. Like,
Mhm.
in the temple I go to also, most of the pujaris are actually women.
Right.
It's
Wow.
shifting around practicality. Yeah, because the thing is, like, a lot of them are also happen to be housewives and all, so
Mm.
they can actually be the pujaris. So things,
Yes.
a lot of things are changing. So, it's good that we live in such,
Yes.
a time. But, so essentially, I think we should start by acceptance. Because definitely, uh, there are lots of, like, issues that, we face. We will face discrimination also, not just in the body of a woman, but in the man, and just in this society. But especially as women also, like, certain discrimination is there. But, like,
Mm.
personally, what works for me is that, like, um, and what was advised to me by this, like, a senior devotee woman. What she told me was that, like, you don't go under it, you don't, like, go above it, you just try to work your way past it. You just try
Yes.
to do your best, you just try to work your way past it, because if not, we're just going to be so caught up in this, that at the end of the day you just sit down like, I spent so much of energy on that, like, did I even have any time for my spiritual practice, which was the root of this whole thing? And we're so
Yes.
lucky also that in the body of a, like, a woman also, we have all of this, like, Sharana Gadi, and all of these emotions also, which can bring us there. So let's just, like, take this opportunity to harness this. Yeah.
Yes, indeed, indeed. Very, very, very well said. I think I think I really hope that this session has been something enlightening, not just for the audience, but I think for us as well as speakers, because like
Yes.
no one like us in this world has complete knowledge or complete understanding of everything and anything. So it's really been a wonderful interaction that we have for one another. And I just also wanted to bring up another eye-opening point by one of our viewers, Miss Aruna, who talks about how women actually have been like a turning point in the Puranic in the Puranic tellings and all. We see women like Satyavati and Kunti, who become a turning point, perhaps a starting point and also a turning point in these epics, because this is something we kind of also overlook many a times. We think about, sometimes people do think about epics as being about a hero rather than a heroine, so on and so forth. But this kind of things really project the different trajectories involved in the epic beyond just gender and so on. Like just looking at them as characters itself, you can see how in their very own societies during the different stages of time, you have this kind of characters who kind of either put forth a question, or put forth a statement that's not necessarily to be seen as a problem or a creation of conflict, but it's really something that changes the entire dynamic. I mean, that is something so important to look at. It really changes the entire narrative flowing and proceedings, and it gives you a whole new different story. Without this kind of turning point by these female characters, we wouldn't today be actually learning so much from these epics, and what are the morals that they want to share with us. Because I think we believe here that it's not like that these epics are trying to tell you that this is right or this is wrong. They're really trying to show you about how the whole idea of self-realization or introspection involves about people having flaws and not necessarily being embodiments of perfection, but really being on a path of discovery, to questioning themselves or questioning their actions, and really trying to understand what this means to the society they're in, to the people who are with them, living with them, and what it means to themselves as an individual, and as a family unit as a whole, like what Vinodhinee and Pavitra were mentioning. And perhaps my final question to you guys would be, what are your thoughts, or what are your hopes for women of this generation when thinking about this Vedic and Puranic literature? What are your thoughts actually, or hopes for the future with regard to women?
Okay, like I said in the previous question, I hope we start giving the respect it deserves, the role of a woman. I think that is the root cause of many problems now. So I hope we start giving the respect it deserves. One thing is the others giving respect, but also we need to find the strength within ourselves also when we are performing these duties. That we have to take examples from these women that we see in our Puranas who are so inspiring. We have to take these examples, and we have to find the strength within ourselves and tell ourselves that what we are doing is equally important, no matter what the others say. So I think I hope that this will slightly change. You are given an option, but you choose not to do it because this is an equally important aspect of the family as a unit. That's
Indeed,
what I
indeed.
think.
That's really beautiful. Pavitra, what about you?
Saying in Puranic times, like how actually the Swayamvar, like, even marriage were actually decided by the woman, which was great. And then, like, sometimes now in the modern times, we hear things like, forced marriages and stuff like that. And I feel like a lot of women, they get disheartened and disillusioned. So what I hope to see is that, like, to not get so easily disheartened and disillusioned by these things, because like someone was saying there, lots of things were actually problems and side effects of, like, a society, that societal side effects. So my goal and my vision, like, for women is just to be the way that just to be that the way that they are, and yeah, and just empower themselves spiritually. That's the best thing that you can do for yourself, because at the end of the day, you're just going to be, like, alone, and all you have is just, like, your spirituality and your relationship with God to bring you back. So that's what I hope to see.
Yeah, like Pavitra said, now the spiritual teachings are available for everyone.
Yes.
So now
Yeah.
we can't give the excuse that, oh, it's
Yeah.
we
No
can't do
excuses.
it.
That's very true. I guess technology has its benefits, perhaps, in enabling a certain connect connection with between us and spirituality in that sense, because we now gain access. You have ebooks, you have books, so many availability of resources. So it's quite it also serves to show that when used in a productive sense, actually technology can bring about this kind of benefits when we are when we are trying to pursue spiritual understandings of things in life. Perhaps not just as women or as men, to not to bring in the kind of binaries, but rather just as souls as a whole. We all are existing in this society together for a certain purpose, for a certain reason, and perhaps as time rolls by, we will realize what is the meaning of our existence, and that might lead us to a higher order of thinking, which is what we hope and aim to achieve in this session. I think I just want to end off with a saying from Manusmriti that I actually said from the start once again. The saying actually goes, yatra naryastu pujyante ramante tatra devataha, yatra itastu na pujyante sarvas tatra palah kriyaha. So basically, always remember one thing. This might sound like it might sound to people like, oh, you're saying this because you're a woman yourself, but well, you can test it out for yourself. This saying, as what I mentioned earlier, serves to show the importance of women in a family unit as a whole, like what Vinodhinee has said so much, emphasized. It's like, just like how metaphorically, our body parts, like how each can operate individually and separately. I guess it's all about us helping one another in this path to understanding ourselves, our realities, and perhaps even transcending them. So always remember to respect your women in whatever role they may have in your life, because when they leave your life, you would definitely see how things would turn out to be otherwise. Which is why, till today, sometimes people just say it without realizing. When they say the woman has left the house in sadness or in anger, we say the Lakshmi has left the house. Shakti has left. Because it's not because to say that we have special powers. Actually, we all do in one way or another, but it's really to show how we are emotionally, intellectually, women have a place in every family unit. And when you acknowledge that, you will realize that women are truly emblems of empowerment, not just in the Vedic age, Puranic age, but even at present, if we are willing to acknowledge their significance in each and everyone's life as a whole. So with that, thank you so much, Vinodhinee and Pavitra. It was really, really an insightful sharing. I have learned so much from both of you. I hope everyone has as well. So with that, thank you so much to everyone for your responses, for your questions, for your thoughts. It really means a lot from us. We are also learning from you as well. So with that, we'll call it a day. Thank you so much once again, guys.
Thank
And we will see you
you.
in our next episode soon, next week. So stay tuned. Bye. Take care.
Bye bye.